Dynamic Manufacturing Magazine, and this is day 2 of the Industry Samurai Conference and Awards Week. Today's panel discussion, which we're going to have in a few minutes, is focused on the topic car makers bid for a greener future. As you can guess from the topic, this is about the automakers' response to the climate change, to the climate crisis. The background of this, and this has become a very popular subject in popular recall ever since the teenage activist Greta Thunberg thundered the words "How dare you" at the world's powerful leaders during the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit. When she said these words, she voiced the anger of a generation. No face-saving argument can hide the fact that climate change is the biggest concern of our time. And transportation is the second biggest source of pollution, the energy sector being the biggest. Within the transportation segment, we have the commercial vehicle segment and the passenger car segment. And today we are going to focus on the passenger vehicle segment. Therefore, the automotive industry carries the crucial responsibility of moving towards a sustainable future with better technologies, whether it is a transition to newer forms of fuel, or making more efficient engines, or making a full or partial transition to electric mobility. Today, we are fortunate to have industry thought leaders of eminence who will discuss this subject with me and the ways in which the Indian and global automotive industry is seeking to reduce its carbon footprint and become a part of the solution. Before I turn to our panelists, I'll quickly introduce them. We have Gautam Datta, consultant, Siemens Digital Industries Software. Gautam has more than 35 years of experience in engineering, IT, and PLM industries, and has held leadership roles in organizations like Siemens, ANSYS, PTC, IBM, and TCS. He has guided manufacturing organizations in their digitalization initiatives. His special area of interest and recent engagements have been in the field of Industry 4.0 and digital transformation of India's manufacturing SMEs. Gautam is an alumnus of Delhi College of Engineering and IIT Madras. He is passionate about his profession and avidly contributes towards improvement of engineering practices in India and making engineering the preferred profession for the new generation. We have Yogesh Datke, Asia Pacific Information Technology Leader at ADM. With around 25 years of automotive IT experience, a true technology champion, Yogesh has focused on designing the global IT strategy across business verticals, competencies, and functions. Yogesh has successfully delivered diverse implementations and deployments with world-class innovative solutions, including Industry 4.0 and Smart Factory projects. Equipped with Organization Development OD certifications, Yogesh follows the servant leader style, and his positive attitude helps deliver the best outcome even during challenging situations. With a strong sense of philanthropy, Yogesh has been associated with NFBM Jagrati School for Blind Girls, Alandi, Pune, India, and helps empower the school girls for their basic needs, education, and employment. Adient is a global leader in automotive seating manufacturing organization with presence in 32 countries, 202 manufacturing units, and 12 dedicated engineering design centers. We have Samir Jindal, Director Engineering, MG Motor India. Samir has a work experience of over 25 years in automotive OEMs and now serves as Engineering Director at MG Motor India, Morris Garages, a fully owned subsidiary of SAIC Motor Corporation. At MG Motor, he launched first internet car of India, MG Hector, and first electric vehicle with internet in 2019. Later in 2020, he launched Gloucester with ADAS, which is Advanced Driver Assistance Safety, and Aster in 2021 with artificial intelligence. An alumnus of Stony Brook University, New York, Samir has chaired many seminars at government agencies like ICAT and as the chairman for Future of Mobility Summit by CII and many others. He runs a knowledge series for young engineers as well in his company. He has a passion for writing and has written 2 books on quotes and short stories about his life. We will start this session with a presentation on the subject from Gautam Datta, after which we will put forth our questions to the panelists. Gautam, over to you.
Thank you, Anand. Just guide me that you can see the screen. Can I start?
Are you can see the screen.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Anand, and thank you, panel, and people who are connected with us. Good morning to all of you. What I have done is I've taken the cue from Anand and made a presentation to set the context for our discussions in the morning today. So what I've done is since it's a big subject, I've limited our topic of discussion to the transformation that and the preparedness that India manufacturing for both from supplier point of view and OEM needs to do for the new generation of cars, which may be hybrid, which may be electric, and we even serving the global need of autonomous. However, we may not immediately be in a position or having the need of implementing autonomous in our nation, but I'm sure we are part of the value chain globally. So what I would discuss is basically the challenges and what kind of preparedness we can have and we need to have, and how we are working globally to address these situations of greener future from both manufacturing point of view as well as from the product point of view. So let's have the key trends. The key trends that we see globally and as well in India is essentially being part of the value chain, which is moving towards autonomous. We have been discussing this for quite a while now. Electrification, that is electric vehicles, and of course, developing products which are designed and manufactured, keeping in mind the shared mobility in front of us. Now, this trend is allowing, what is the key output of this this slide is that the key trends that we are facing are allowing changing business environment and opening the doors for new players who don't have to deal with legacy cost and processes, who bring a very strong IT software knowledge and background. You can imagine of the two automotive professionals on this panel today, both are very strong on IT as well. And that's how the companies would be as they enter the new entrants, and they innovate with an out-of-the-box thinking. So that makes the stage set for our traditional companies to change, to transform, and to prepare for the future. What we are seeing today, one key thing, without bringing a lot of technical jargons, is our products and processes leading to the product are both becoming very complex. But that complexity is not the only thing. It is not limited to complexity. We also need to move faster to bring innovative vehicles to the market earlier. We want to lower the development cost and manufacturing cost. We have to improve our efficiencies. We have to also create new business models so that we can out-innovate, build differentiable products, and make sure that products are now suited for shared mobility. I was chatting with Anand yesterday, and we kind of discussed this point that there's a big difference between personally owned vehicles and shared mobility, because the percentage utilization of the vehicle when we own it is about 8 to 10%. But in shared mobility environment, it could be as high as 80 to 90%. So obviously the design, the support, the services, everything needs to basically go through a change. What are we looking at? We are looking at the entire product life cycle, the design of the product and production system, the manufacturing, and the services with which we have to support. Because of the enhanced component of electronics and software, the service capability of our maintenance partners would need to be revamped as well. And that is one big area of preparedness and readiness for both digital and greener future. Keeping the green in mind, it is very important to note that green would mean smart, and smart would mean a larger component of electronics and software. So anyone who's been in this business for more than 15 to 20 years would be able to see the slide, the same slide, that if we go back 25 years and the way we see it today looks and feels totally different. all the aspects of components that we have listed, both in terms of the product on Transport Revolution and process that support that product, have gone through a sea change. While we have autonomous and electrification, we also have systems engineering supported it, accelerated product development, maybe even including 3D printing, additive manufacturing, smart manufacturing to make focused, customized or personalized products, and IoT and closed loop feedback from manufacturing and quality supported by cloud and applications supporting the entire value chain. Now, what does it mean? The questions that we have to ask, and we are asking ourselves, how are we confident that autonomous vehicles will perform safely and comfortably? I agree. A lot of people may say, oh, this is not a question for India. Agreed. But we as suppliers, we need to supply to the world. So this is a question we would need to answer if we are part of the global value chain. How does that happen? By continuous verification and validation. Because every decision we take earlier used to be supported with some kind of physical or combination of physical and simulated prototype. Now we have to do 100%. That is probably one of the biggest challenge of autonomous vehicle, that the number of things to be checked is enormous and it cannot be physically checked. Therefore, it needs a simulated environment. And therefore, our preparedness towards the simulated design, simulated integration support that we need to provide to a product developer like that. Sorry. How can I accelerate our electrification with strict targets and zero emissions? This is where it becomes green, zero emissions and maximum range. We have this fear of range in electric vehicle, and we have to make sure that we address that. And that is possible by testing out the units of battery, powertrain, electrical, electronics, and the entire combination of that. Also bringing in NVH issues, which require special focus when we have an electric vehicle, because the noise itself is going to be much less. So every NVH issue will become a high reason for discomfort. We need to track the traceability and functionality, including the safety, because that's the nature of the product. For vehicle electrification, this is one of the examples. We work with Tesla, and when they started to develop their car, the 12-volt electrical system design required a very strong electrical system configuration control. And we worked with them so that we brought in all the combination of electrical and electromechanical that combine to create the back-end infrastructure within the vehicle that supports its ability to do what it is supposed to do in Tesla. And that's how it is, we made very successful product on time. Okay, how do we connect? This is another question we need to increasingly answer. How can you connect different worlds of electrical, mechanical, and software? I'm sure we have recognized that development processes of electrical and mechanical products and components are very different if we add software, because software development follows a different kind of process. How do we ensure two different processes integrate and synchronize so that when we produce the new versions, new variants, new options, we are fully in control with its components? No more just about mechanical or electrical engineering, but also a lot of software and electronics in it. And that's where we have to become ready and prepare ourselves for agile engineering environment that allows us to understand. We have been doing this work in India. We have been doing at OEM level. We have started to do with supplier level. And that's another aspect I would like to bring on the table, that if we have to continue to improve our contribution from automotive to our manufacturing GDP and to the global value chain, we have to escalate and elevate our offerings to become more smarter and complex. Vanilla products, vanilla components, vanilla sub-assemblies will not give us the margins and profitability. So it's a combination of not the digital and greener future, digital, greener, and more profitable future. Anand, if you allow me, That is the level of preparedness we should be. And we need to be ready for this in-vehicle software engineering, model-based systems engineering, continuous verification and validation capabilities. I'm not going deeper. Today is not the forum, but it is, I just want to leave these thoughts behind. How to be ready to embrace revolutionary technologies for product design, how to be ready to create these various alternatives without having the facility of physical prototyping and the ability to simulate and validate integrated design. How do we optimize our production processes? Because imagine, we are today used to making lots of cars, bigger volume from our facility. Imagine making lots of different variants and different models from the same facility. How do we improve our capability to produce different stuff from the same infrastructure without adding cost? This would require a different level of smart manufacturing capability. This is, now I'm talking inside the factory. Till now I was talking about the product. How do I process plan and validate? How do I process plan and execute the production? How do I make sure the feedback system gives us inputs for constant improvements, both in terms of operational efficiency and quality? So these are the important things. This is one more example of a global company which is able to make, using these smart manufacturing capabilities, 30% short of development time. And look at that, 70,000 different product combinations, not made, but available for customers to choose from, and 3x more cars produced from the same facility. So last but not the least, we are talking about connected cars, because this is where we would get the feedback of improving both the serviceability as well as the service of shared mobility. So how do we intelligently collect data for meaningful insights to improve our performance, both as a business as well as a product? And this is where the IoT platforms and low-code capability for developing analytics on the fly will come in. I would encourage most of our suppliers, automotive suppliers and OEMs, to experience how low-code rapid prototyping of app is possible today without having very deep knowledge of software coding and software development. That's the kind of capability available today, so that you can bring in more and more data. And when you bring in more and more data, make it contextual and meaningful, make it actionable. That becomes the basis of AI and machine learning for the future. And that cycle continues. So as a summary, I would like to say that our preparedness, not just for digital and greener, but also more profitable automotive future, including suppliers of automotive systems, is to turn complexity into competitive advantage by creating digital twins, which gives us continuous feedback of intelligent data with which we can continuously optimize and improve, by personalizing digitalization so that we can create customer-centric products and give them what they're looking for, and leverage a broad ecosystem of software people, product developers, design, system integrators, startups, maintenance service partners, and suppliers, to bring everybody together using open technology to produce new products as the greener future will demand. Thank you, Anand. Go ahead.
Many thanks, Gautam, for setting the tone of the panel in such a well-rounded, in-depth, and comprehensive manner. Now, moving on to defining the problem that today's discussion and we as speakers, as global citizens, as the present generation of decision makers seek to address. And that problem is about the climate crisis situation that faces us today. Lately, if you have found yourself complaining more about frequent and excessive heat waves or heavier rains than usual, you're not alone and you're not wrong. The increasing occurrence of extreme weather events, such as the recent flash floods which inundated Arizona in the second week of July, constitute a mounting evidence that the physical infrastructure of our cities and states is in the present state is insufficient and incapable of handling them. Such catastrophic events like hurricanes with Harvey, Sandy, storms, Elsa, and extreme temperature waves, which we heard about, we read in the news in Canada and USA Northwest. They continue to wallop, singe, and freeze our cities with increased frequency and ferocity. The National Climate Assessment Panel, a government interagency, which is a part of which is a UN body, it includes more than 1,300 scientists, has forecast a temperature rise of 2.5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit over the next century. Such variations in temperature could cause catastrophic changes in environment. For context, at the end of the last ice age, average temperatures were only 5 to 9 degrees cooler than today. Experts repeatedly cautioned that the best meaning plans and resource allocation at the local level will not be enough to avoid the damage that the climate crisis is capable of causing. An effective course of action for us, therefore, is to fix our supply chains, our industrial processes in the way that they are resource positive, transparent, and ethical. Today's discussion is about the car makers, the industry that is at the forefront of this battle, this movement of change. My question to the panelists is, how do you view this problem of climate crisis from a car maker's perspective? And what are we doing overall as global citizens to be able to counter them as an industry? Yogesh?
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for the invite. I mean, it's a great honor to be alongside Jindal Sahab and Gautam Sahab. I may not have the same experience what they have. I'm just a new kid in the block probably, but I just wanted to add a couple of taglines from my side. Typically I've been in the industry last 25 years, auto IT industry kind of. I've seen at least in India and globally, the revolution which came from the assembly lines to the innovation in the sub assembly lines. From assembly lines, we used to do the manual processes for every component delivery, and kind of for now it's more on the design boards, getting it ready first, getting it tested first before it goes to the production cycle. From sustainability perspective, that's the focus of the conversation today. I can talk about the car sitting typically, and overall on a component basic, more and more a lightweight component, the aluminum alloy based components that we are going to see from weight management perspective, having an ability to recycle using polyforming base foam structures, usually breathable or waterproof kind of sitting surfaces from fabric or from trim perspective that we will see. These are the innovation. I'm not saying these are rocket sciences. These are innovations which are in the industry. These are cost-effective solutions to be implemented and have been implemented in the industry, and making sure that not only just the 90% of the luxury vehicles get the benefit of the innovation, but the important factors is the passenger vehicles, which are getting utilized about 90% odd on the streets, get the benefit of that innovation. That is most important. Otherwise, if somebody have a Lamborghini and he or she rides it for the 10% of the time, only in the night hours, at least in India, 2 a.m. time, and can experience those safety features, those innovation features, then we are limiting ourselves. So we have to be cost effective in our innovations, making it sure that the innovations are available to everyone, at least in some or other form, whether it's in a safety feature perspective, compliance feature perspective, human safety angle perspective, including your fabric colors, including your pre-adjustment ergonomics in the seating and whatnot. I mean, it's a whole gimmick. Once we open a Pandora, every leaf out of it is going to be very important and critical, typically for passenger vehicles and overall to the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Yogesh, for that helpful insight. Samir, what are your views? How do you view the problem of climate crisis as an automaker?
Yeah, I think, thank you, first of all, Anand, for giving me this opportunity to speak, and very good insights from Mr. Gautam, and also Yogesh gave very invaluable things what automotive industries are doing in general. So I will limit it to more on the car manufacturing and our model side, and I will give you some insight on what MG Motor is specifically doing. So, in light of our Prime Minister uh, declaration as well in Conference of Parties 26 that India has to reduce the intensity of carbon by less than 45% by 2030, and also we have to reduce this by 1 billion ton from currently status. So we at MG Motor also are determined to do it very actively, and right from the beginning of the inception of our plant, we have formed a sustainability and environmental committees for taking this into various directions. Personally, as a director of engineering, I have taken an initiative for going into connected cars uh, right from the beginning of the plant inception and product selection. And we have brought first internet car of India, which is Hector. And this is a connected car. And then we brought the electric vehicle, which is along with the connected car, which was first in its segment, ZS EV. And along with this, we also have reduced now on the environmental side 50% of our carbon footprint. In terms of, we have now collaborated with a company called CleanMax for establishing a wind solar hybrid energy. And this is with a hybrid park, and we will get a clean energy. And this will approximately save 2 lakh metric ton of CO2 over 15 years, which is equivalent to around 13 lakh trees planting. Along with that, we are also doing a lot of things in our paint shop by introducing new chemicals for degreasing process at the room temperature, eliminating a lot of heating and reducing the consumption of the fuels. In addition, we are the first OEM for non-major accident hazard category. We used piped natural gas for our all the manufacturing operations. Inside the plant also, we have taken a lot of conservation initiatives with energy efficient systems, installation of LEDs, motion sensors in the lights in office areas, toilets everywhere, solar powered street lights, optimization of the equipment running time. And with all these incentives, we are able to reduce around 800 tons of carbon CO2 emissions, equivalent to around 4,800 trees. And we also use, as Yogesh mentioned, a lot of recyclable materials in our product. And this is actually up to the life cycle of the product. And this reduce a lot of zero waste and no landfill dumping. And in 2022, our aim is to reduce by 50% of these climatic changes target. We achieved ISO 14001, which is an environmental management system certification. And also we are going for IGBC green certification next year. So all these things, we also have a huge area in our plant where we have installed, planted the Miyawaki forest inside the campus, which is a dense multi-layered forest comprising of local grown species. In addition to that, we have for the ZS EV, there along with the life cycle, we have also to take care of the batteries, which are hazardous to the environment. So we have tied up with the recycling agency TESAMM to recycle all these ZS EV batteries after it is used at certain area, and all certain other areas like upcycling the electronics, donating old laptops to the needy people, minimizing as much as purchases, and our supply chain, in the supply chain also taking care of least amount of motion of the vehicles. So telling all this about the environment and the sustainability thing, I will move to the product side. So also on the product side, we are working.
Samir,
Yeah.
sorry to come in. In fact, we wanted to delve deeper into this in our second question, and I'm really glad that you brought this up as
Yeah.
to what all initiatives you're taking. Sorry. What initiatives you are taking. If we could set the, to set the tone of the discussion, I was keen on knowing, what are the views, how are the car makers looking at this problem? Because this is something that is affecting us everywhere, whether we live in Delhi, especially whether we live in a North Indian city, whether it is Delhi or even other cities like Kanpur and Banaras. They are among the
Yeah, yeah.
world's most polluting cities, and
Exactly.
car makers are the one who get the most flack, although statistically it is the electricity generation companies and other ways of burning fossil fuels which also comprise big sources of pollution. From a car maker's perspective, it is a feeling among the general population as well as common industry folk across verticals, that in absence of regulation, car makers won't be doing much, because they want to see solutions which are feasible, which do not cut into their margins, which are introduced slowly. But the climate crisis, as I introduced in the beginning, is something that is knocking on our doors. And now our younger generation, teenage activists, these little children are telling us, how dare you? And this is something where we have to respond as an industry. So how do you see this whole climate crisis, which is affecting us all, from a car maker's perspective?
Okay, got it. I'll speak on that. So,
Yes.
as you know, the air quality index, or AQI, is getting poorer and poorer in our cities. And in Delhi, it is like going above 500 during this Diwali time. So, a lot of car makers, including us, are very sensitive about this. And we have installed a PM 2.5 filter in our air conditioners and all the new models. And if you see, we have a indication of this AQI index outside the environment and inside the car. And if you see inside the car, it will be in the range of 35 to 50, which is a very pure air to breathe. And all these initiatives car makers are taking for the environment, and they are very cautious. And in addition to that, government is also very stringent now, year by year, on the regulation perspective. As you know, real driving emissions is coming up in 2023, and we have all the COP in place, conformity of production for the emission regulations. And this we have to do every year for all the car lines, as well as now there is a new regulation, which is in-service compliance, where we have to test the customer vehicle on the road, which is 15,000 kilometer, or uh, uh, 6 months in service. We have to take that from the customer for every car line and test it. So we get the deterioration of the emissions in the car. So as the government is tightening all these regulations, the car makers are also getting very sensitive when they are doing the designing and release of the products, and they have to maintain that during the life cycle. So it's not that we are callous towards all these environmental things. We also are very cautious, and we also are trying as best as possible to make the environment clean. And this does not comes free. It's a very high costly technology. Suppose I am taking my diesel engine from FCA Italy, Fiat, uh, and then they are charging me very high. So I have to pass on this to customer as well. And then customer thinks that because of only the environment, they have to pay, let's say, 1 lakh rupees or 2 lakh rupees more for a diesel engine. And this is where, all OEMs are facing this challenge. And this thing that one side there is an environment thing which we have to manage, other side is the cost of the vehicle. So there are certain challenges, but definitely I think as collectively all the OEMs and automakers are making very conscious efforts for doing as much as possible for the environment friendly things.
Thank you so much, Samir. Gautam? Your thoughts?
This was a story of Mr. Jindal to tell, he being a car manufacturer. Anything we say would be more like sermonizing as compared to his practical view, because I think his view would be most authentic from both facility point of view he mentioned, as well as from the product point of view. And he also added the policy perspective. I would like to say something from a outside looking inside towards a business, because I don't belong to per se a manufacturer, but more like a facility provider and enabler for suppliers and engineering suppliers and engineering OEM. I would like to bring in one of the R's of 3 R's. There are 3 R's of sustainability, right? Reduce, reuse, recycle. And we heard Mr. Jindal speak about reduce and recycle. Reuse and recycle. Let's talk about reduce. Okay. I think there are abilities, capabilities, intention, regulation, and benefits of looking at how we can reduce basic need of doing more with less. Okay. How many parts to a vehicle? At approximately 30,000. Okay. Yep. Approximately 30,000 parts in a vehicle. Even if you assume that some of them are multiple parts of the same type, we are looking at 15,000 different kind of parts. Each one of them, some of them are different material. Why don't we, and some people have taken that responsibility, okay, let's reduce the number of parts by 20%. When we reduce the number of parts, it reduces number of operations, it reduces effort, it reduces cost, it reduces many, many other things that are surrounding manufacturing. What if we we will reduce the weight by 25% of everything? Not 1%, not 2%, not 4%. An atrocious target of, let's say, 15-20%. How? Today we have the ability to do that. Rather than having solid inside, like Yogesh mentioned, we can have the matrix structure inside, because now we don't need to forge it, cast it, bend it. We can deposit it. I know it is going to be more expensive, but it will become viable only when the deposited part is more complex. That means our products today, as an outsider, I can say, as an engineer, our products today have a geometry of the kind it has because that's how we could manufacture it for last 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Many of the things that we use, including a lot of components of the vehicle, are the way it is. A connecting rod is a connecting rod because that's how we can manufacture it. Any other shape of connecting rod, we don't know. We have to figure out how to manufacture. With additive manufacturing, we can break those molds. We don't need to manufacture it the way we want. We can now have multiple parts designed as a single part, 20-to-1, 25-to-1, because we can deposit. I know it is going to be more expensive, but I don't think it is unviable. Right? What the price that we are going to pay for climate change is going to be a lot more than the investment required for doing more with less. So I am a very strong proponent, in addition to policy, in addition to these facility initiatives that we are taking, to ensure that we change the way we work, change the way we design, we change the way we teach our children in school and colleges machine design. I think we are still teaching them machine design and kinematics of machine and strength of material the way we were teaching them 30 years ago, whereas the world and technology has changed. I was reading somewhere a report and you would have read it too. The problem that we are facing post-COVID in supply chain is because the way we have designed it since last 50 years, just in time, whatever we need, last moment, all that. And suddenly we realize with COVID-19, both the supply side and demand side, supply chain breaking away, and we realize, oh, this is actually the result of the way we designed it. So time has come to kind of course correction in probably both on how we design, how we envisage, how we manufacture, how we supply, how do we receive, how do we assemble. I know I may be saying out of fantasy. There was a time we used to buy laptops and computers. There was a time we used to buy components and put them together. Till supply chain redefined the way computers are made and stopped us going to the local markets to buy components like fans and motherboards and bodies and putting it together at home. Days are not far away when all the protocols are defined in an EV. We will be assembling an EV at home. Thank you.
Excellent view, great view, Gautam, and you spoke about the technologies towards the end of your thoughts, which is a very pertinent point, and which is something I want to put forth to our speakers as my next question. Yogesh, as a component supplier to all the major automotive industries, brands in the world, you keep a keen eye on the trends of technologies, newer technologies that are coming up, the newer trends that are emerging. From that perspective, I want to ask you, where do you see the car industry heading in terms of technologies for sustainability in the near future, with the pressure coming in from the climate change groups, as well as the profitability and the feasibility part, which is an insider? What is the right balance? Where do you see this industry heading in the next 5-6 years in terms of technologies, in terms of trends towards sustainability?
So, I mean, it's a great question. It has many folds to it, not just a single line answered. And as well as it is definitely triggering the brain waves in me because it has, I'm just a car seating industry representative probably, but when it comes to car manufacturing, making it economical, making it profitable, sustainable, etc., there are many points to it. And as Gautam already mentioned, there are not less than 32,000 components, smaller, bigger, we use for car manufacturing, but also for car seat. It's a equal representation. We have about 2,500, 2,700 components, various components in a car seat. And we did conscious efforts to reduce the number of components that we use, whether it's making it a single mold, making it instead of making a 3-piece mold. Typically in aerospace industry, we use a single mold to have the economic seat. Now we don't have two separate molds for that. It helped in saving, not only from the footprint perspective, but footprint in the sense the conveyor belt and cooking, the foam cooking belts and etc., but also from the overall logistics perspective. Second, from the transportation industry, we touched upon when we started the conversation. We stopped completely transporting foams, because transporting foam is as good as transporting the air. And by reducing that overall globally at various places wherever there was possibility, we made it a point that we don't transport the foam, rather produce it over there locally in nearby facility, so that we save on the logistics, not from the economics perspective, but to help pollution controls. It's not viable. It's economically, this is the stupidest decision, I'll tell you, because it's very costly to set up a unit for foam. But to help environment, to help to make sure our logistics do not attract unnecessary transportation, we took a conscious decision of investing the amount in it, and that keeps us ahead of the competition also in ROI perspective. From seating component perspective, the innovations are there in the stress and fatigue detection mechanisms, so that the safety of the vehicle and safety of the passenger is taken care of. The smartphone connectivity, I'll not focus that on, because everybody handles the smartphone more efficiently probably than me. So I'm just I don't want to get into those apps, and kind of my daughter uses it much better than me. But most important part out of this is customizing it, like what Gautam just mentioned, that somebody want to assemble their own seat. Do we give a choice that today? Not necessary. But do we have the capacity to give that choice tomorrow? Yes, at least for certain luxury vehicles, there is a choice for color, for if you talk about Recaro, Recaro is one of our arm which has that facility to have a customized seating for luxury vehicles, for racing vehicles. You can order one single seat. Of course, it will come up with a paycheck, but it has a capacity that I want a thickness of 18 mm instead of 6 mm. I want a back curve blended by 8% more than the usual ergonomics. Fine, but it's all possible. It comes with benefits and merits. So to come back to your question, on the viability, sustainability, affordability, and etc. I think it's yes, we are there, but not in a larger scale. Thank you.
Thanks, Yogesh. Thanks for that insightful perspective. Samir, I'll pass on the same question, ask you the same question in terms of the technologies, emerging technologies, the disruptive technologies, the trends of the future. Where do you see this industry heading from a larger perspective towards sustainability? Because there is a struggle between profitability and the pressure groups who want us to act now, and justifiably so. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, thanks. So Mr. Gautam also pointed out a very good thing about reducing number of components, and that's what our endeavor is, and also not to look at the traditional methods of manufacturing and go into innovative way of thinking now, and it's required right from the school and colleges to change that thinking. So I really appreciate his views. And this is something I also learned from one of my colleagues in US recently, that some of the car manufacturers there are now doing 3D printing of the components, and this reduces the land area in acres, where Ford and General Motors used to put the plant in acres. Now it is reduced to very small area, and they can produce the same number of vehicles with that technology. So still India has to go a long way in these directions, but this is something giving us a future trends at how US and Europe are moving towards. And as you know, electric vehicles revolution is now there in US and UK already, in European countries, Norway, Sweden. And by 2030, they are going to be more than 50% electric vehicles in all these countries. So India has to move ahead in this direction. And what I see is next 3 to 4 years, we are now poised for a revolution where our automakers have to go into these technologies forcefully as well, because of the regulations governments are tightening. Without that, our CAFE, which is we have to meet for the environmental thing, no OEM will be able to meet without having a sufficient number of electric vehicles in their portfolio. So this is one thing which we are also working on, a small EV now, and many other OEMs are also announced, including Hyundai, and also Maruti is now started looking into it seriously. So this is all going to be, lot of revolutionary things I see coming up in the next years in automotive industry. Another thing which I would like to mention is Yogesh mentioned about the safety, which reminds me of that we brought the ADAS first time in India in our models. Gloucester with 1.0 level, and now in Ester with 2.0 level. So ADAS 5.0 is fully autonomous vehicles, which are already in pipeline in the US, and places like Google and Apple, they are doing their trials. So we have to move towards that, and this safety conscious thing will also help us to reduce a lot of these greenhouse emissions, and as well as carbon footprint. In addition to that, I was reading about the usage of artificial intelligence in the automotive industry. This is getting practiced a lot and lot more in US and UK. And some places in Europe, they are now using in supply chain the drones instead of vehicles. So this is one of the things, and they are also for the car framing. They are using intelligent robots where they do some sort of algorithms for making it more efficient. So these are some of the things where our car makers also should start looking into in these all the innovative things. Like Volkswagen, they have now one plant where it is 100% renewable power only, and that reduce their footprint, carbon footprint to great extent. Also, they have started using the flax, hemp, cellulose, cotton, and kenaf in lot of the parts manufacturing, in door trims, armrests, floor insulation, hood insulation, panels, side panel trims. So our component manufacturers and suppliers can actually add to lot of these type of recyclable material usage in the OEMs by giving them an idea, and also ensuring them that this material will be able to sustain the durability and the requirements of the stringent standards of global automotive standards. So what I see right now, Anand, that we are on a very interesting phase of revolution in the automotive industry, and a lot of car makers are experimenting, doing proof of concept of many new things, and we are also tying up. We have an innovation thing where we do and nurture the startups in the company, and we fund them for new ideas. So this is a full-fledged program of MG Motor. And so all these things, and we are also looking into artificial intelligence, where we started with giving a small robot in our new Ester car, where you can speak with it, and he will give you a Wikipedia inputs into the car on the car screen. So with all this, I think it's going to be a change, a big change, Anand, in the automotive industry.
Samir, related a follow-up quick question. See, as director engineering, you must also be into designing of cars, the future launches. Do you feel, from your perspective and industry perspective, do car makers today are more environmentally conscious when designing vehicles?
Yeah, it comes in terms of firstly the mass reduction, as Gautam pointed out. We have a structured program of reducing a mass in the car. So let's say if my hectare is 1600, 1700 kg, and if we are able to reduce by 8 to 10%, it's a big achievement for the next platform. And I have started already working on that consciously. It is not only reducing the emissions, it also increases my fuel efficiency on the vehicle. So lots and lots of car makers in India are working on this special ways of doing it by using high grade special material in the cars and reducing the weight in the vehicle. So this is very conscious thing. As well as automakers, when they design the platform abroad, they have a mass reduction workshops doing continuously on the design phase. So as Gautam pointed out, it's not in the later stage when the dies are made. It is very costly. It happens at the stage of designing that the designers are given a target of reducing of mass to by 10 to 15%. It reduces the cost as well as it increases the fuel efficiency in the car. So that is one thing. Another is the new technology, as I told you, using ADAS, internet, IoT, and of course the electric vehicles, and also now as fuel cells is a emerging technology where we are actually not polluting the environment at all, which happens with even with the generation of electricity, because in itself we have a generator in the car of in form of hydrogen. So all those things are now getting popular in research. In Japan already it started. In China, our parent company SAIC already launched such fuel cells vehicles, and automakers in India have also started looking into it. Currently, from the Indian consumer, it's very costly vehicles. But as the raw material and chemical research will enhance, these uh, cost of the vehicles will start coming down. And I see in next 8 to 10 years, this is going to be, a mainstream as we see IC engine and diesel currently.
Brilliant, fascinating. These fascinating points. Particularly, what struck me the most was the device that generates electricity in the car, in the sense that there is this common perception that with the introduction of electric vehicles, one takes care of the downstream part, but not of the upstream part, as far as reducing the carbon footprint is concerned, because electricity, about 60 to 70% is still generated by fossil fuels. So that's a great point that we are car makers are now integrating the generation. At least the thought is there, the attempt is there.
Yes.
The initiatives are being made. Gautam, passing on the baton to you about the technologies, the newer emerging disruptive technologies. What is their role in moving the industry towards sustainability?
So one, of course, as I shared already, and we kind of work in the back end of Mr. Jindal's stated plans and proposals. We are the back end. So we enable them. They kind of look at technology, IT providers like us, and they say, okay, I need to design a new battery. Show me and give me a system that can help me simulate the chemical reactions and structure the the cells, which gives us the best efficiency. And at the same time, it allows me the geometric orientation that I would like to have the capabilities for. For example, batteries today make the flows of electric vehicle. They don't come in boxes the way it comes in a conventional car. So and that's how many platforms are being designed. So that's one role of ours. But there is an additional role, and while Mr. Jindal was speaking, it came to my mind. Slowly and slowly, if you see, we have started as a community, as an ecosystem, demanding from our suppliers and our policymakers things that support us in our intent. If our intent is to reduce the number of parts, I would pass on this requirement to my supplier as well. If I have an intent of reducing my weight to 10 to 15%, I will pass on this need to the suppliers as well. Imagine now, if I have to reduce my carbon footprint, I will extend that to the energy supplier tomorrow and say, give me a certification that your energy is using 30% less fossil fuel. If all of us as consumers of energy, being auto manufacturers, being auto suppliers, if we start demanding such certification, the chain continues. And eventually the chain will get completed in a shortest while possible in the future. And an environment and ecology of reduced consumption, reduced, increased sustainability would get created. I think that cycle has begun from, as Mr. Jindal said, if Prime Minister has signed the document, be sure that we will have regulations that regulate us, both in the consumer side as well as in the supply side. And that push or pull would make the entire chain to continue till it is completed in cycle, because everything is here. It's conservation of energy, conservation of resources in the world. Nothing is wasted. It's all here. It all depends on how we make it useful, or we let it dump in a, under the sand, buried, thinking that, it's like, it's kind of vanish away, which it will not. It'll stay on the earth, and there's nothing that leaves the earth, including the drop of water. Like they say, the water that we are drinking probably was the same as it was drunk by the dinosaurs millions of years ago, because it's the same water. It's a conserved environment on the earth. So the point I'm trying to make, I think we have to recognize automakers and automotive as a product is a driving force of every economy. If we start demanding as an ecology, the cycle will get completed faster. That's an added responsibility we have, being in the forefront of technology and consumerism. You are silent, Anand.
Sorry.
Yeah.
A quick follow-up question. You mentioned about the push and pull and the target that had been set by policymakers in India particularly. Now, there are two parts to this question. One is, do you feel that the policy push, which we are seeing in India and in the US in President Biden's infrastructure plan, a large sum has been allocated for climate, for tackling climate crisis. Do you feel that the policy push is hastening the change, which could go either way? We are seeing the emergence of different types of technologies. For example, Japan is saying that they are going to replace a big part of their engines with those driven by hydrogen, for instance. Now that technology, one doesn't know in other parts of the world how well tested that technology is. The awareness has not been built with the users, for example. Just to give an example, so a lot of car makers and technocrats are announcing newer technologies, newer ways of coming out with this, which may or may not be backed with feasibility, with a private push of things. So that is one part of the question, that do you feel that this is being hastened in the face of policy push? Second part of the question is that do you feel a private initiative is better? One should be able to support and encourage private initiative in this sector by hankering down on awareness. For example, everybody talks about Elon Musk, for instance. Now his initiative has taken this industry to a point where it was in the beginning, at the start of ICE engines, where electric motors was the first technology that was being taken forward, and suddenly ICE engines came forward with different technology. So he has taken this forward many strides ahead, Mr. Musk, and there's a private initiative. So your thoughts on these two?
So first one, I am probably not equipped with so much of knowledge and reach to answer your question, other than my personal view, which is, are we hastening? Nothing that we are doing for improving our climate problem would and can be termed as hastened. I think it is already late, and I kind of agree with many of the younger speakers that how dare we? Yeah, I would also bring in the more deeper discussions of intergenerational discounting, that howsoever we may be giving lip service towards, we believe that we would care for you children, but actually our acts don't replicate that feeling. So yes, so I'm of the view that we should be harsher towards ourselves in terms of speed. And because don't forget, if COP26, as Mr. Jindal said, needs to be believed, there are few countries who will cease to exist before our actions show result. Okay, so I think if you speak from their point of view, there's nothing called hastening. We are already late. So that's my first response. But I'm limited in knowledge to answer beyond that. In the second part, in terms of technologies, you said in terms of allowing the private players, I totally agree with you. I think not just allowing, I think policy should include, we have been talking about cluster services in automotive world for a long time in India. We have been discussing in the boardrooms and with the policymakers, but true cluster services where a local cluster service of providing support for digital technologies, support for lowering the consumption, improving the affluent treatment, etc. If we can create such cluster services in the industrial areas, the big industrial areas of India, supporting small and medium business segments, which are really large in numbers compared to sophisticated companies, which are limited, then we have those who have the intent, but they are learning and their resources are limited, I think and then involve private sector into providing services in the cluster services, something like cloud, something like software manufacturers like us offering subscription-based products now and pay-as-you-go model, you know, to allow smaller players to participate. I think it is doable, economically viable. Instead of just allowing, the word I'm changing is investing and partnering with the private enterprise to ensuring that we give cluster services to local developers to ensure that they adopt it faster. Did I answer that question?
Absolutely. Spot on. Thank you so much. That was very helpful. Yogesh, any thoughts on this?
Well, you know, I may have to borrow some lines from Gautam on this. That you know, I'm probably, you know, just a new kid in a block, and you know, may not be equipped to answer those questions efficiently the way you want it to be. However, I do have a different perspective. I normally do not believe in questioning others. I do not believe in questioning my father. I believe in delivering by myself. Okay, because my father is the way that he is. He has brought me up. He has all the rights to give me the education, and it's me who should be implementing the change. Take that in the hand, deliver it, show what you can do instead of questioning others. Now, somebody may be, you know, we may be late. You know, everybody agrees to that. We may be way far ahead, like 20, 30, 20, you know, for 35 years ahead of implementing any solution. We should have implemented in 1970s probably, but it has not happened. Fine, accept it as a challenge. What can we do to make up that? It's a young generation's ability to brain it, put up the solution on the card, and then explain that solution instead of just questioning. Okay, it's very easy to be emotional. It's very easy to question. I was in a school and my teacher used to tell, any stupid can ask a question. Okay, but it's the intelligent person who will have solution to that question and then pronounce the question. Okay, keeping that point aside, from an environmental sustainability perspective, it's a collaborative effort. I mean, of course, government has a role to play to bring the necessary controls, compliances into the picture. Organizations, supply chain, and the, you know, tier 1, tier 2 suppliers, everyone has a role to play in it, in making sure that they bring innovation in the product. Innovation does not mean that you need a rocket science. Innovation is very simple, straightforward things also. Just change the way you're doing the things. If I continue to do the manufacture the seat, I used to continue the manufacturing 1980s. Will I sustain? Because I need to make car seats on the same conveyor belt for 3 OEMs. Will I be able to do that with traditional manufacturing processes? No. Same, you know, Jindal Sahab already mentioned that, you know, in a car seat, car assembly mechanisms, the carbon footprint mechanisms, the regulations on the industry setup, the regulations on reconsumable energy or consumable energy, how I want to make sure that my green is embedded and I'm maintaining the transparency while putting up those numbers while for the carbon emission, be truthful to ourselves. I'm not, people are there to audit, I know, but auditors can be fooled. But just be true to yourself. That's most important thing for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Yogesh, for that powerful take. There's a lot to take away from those thoughts. Samir, what are your thoughts on the push and pull between various forces that are driving this industry, including policy, private initiative, innovation, transparency, as Yogesh mentioned?
Yeah. I was just first listening to Mr. Gautam, and he was very right that this is not hastening. This is something which we are trying to take some initiatives, and the initiatives cannot happen without a proper policy makers and government full push coming into the picture. We can only be a very small part of the community, but the large part is governed by government directives and a lot of policies which they bring in. So it's not hastening. It is our role. I think what OEMs are trying to do. I am not also very knowledgeable on this subject, but once 2-3 years back, when I attended these conferences where all the CEOs of Renault and other companies were there, and government officials were there, and when they were asking them, give us your plan of how you are going to develop electric vehicles in India and all. So the question what CEOs were doing with the government was that where is your roadmap? You will show us the roadmap first. What is your roadmap of creating an infrastructure? So the key question here is our government also thought defined way of creating that. Having said that, we are trying to do our part of it, creating a lot of places, charging infrastructure in terms of installing the chargers at people's home and offices. Also in the navigation system, we are trying to give all the chargers available in the public, and that reduces the anxiety of your travel, of your long distance travel. Wherein your electric vehicle, let's say our electric vehicle can travel 330-400 kilometers, while Tata or Mahindra can travel 150 to 200 kilometers only. And then when you have to go to a long travel, you have to plan all that. And that comes on your navigation system and reduces your anxiety as well. So we'll have to do as much as possible for the people and for our customers, our owners of the vehicle to make their life easy. But government has also to expedite a lot of things across the country. These things are happening in pockets, as we can see policies across Rajasthan, across Maharashtra, across Gujarat, across many state government policies for these incentives. But as a countrywide central policy, it is still not being shown publicly. Then on the Yogesh point, I also agree that this millennium generation is very different. They want results. They want somebody, who can execute the things. They don't want people to, promise and don't deliver. And they don't want to go back to their parents or just, banking on them or depending on them. They want to live their own independent life and independent thoughts. And for that, they have their own ideas, and they want to create a better future for what we have seen in our lives, our country and our environment. They want to live in a more advanced and friendly environment. So these are a lot of changes in the society as well. We observe day in and day out. And this also is a cause which makes the push and pull of all these things happening on the mobile, the apps. And as you see recently, we have also used car as a platform, CAP, in the new vehicle, where on the car itself, you can order a lot of things like pizza while going back to your home. And at your home, your vehicle will be, your pizza will be delivered by the time you are home. So this type of services, payment on your car platform and all those things are becoming now more handy, and youngsters are getting used to it. Otherwise, we old thinkers, we always think that why is it there in the car? Car is for driving from one place to another. But they use the car as, for different services, for different convenience. Just like mobile, earlier we used to think it was only for talking, but now we use mobile for everything, sending emails to, doing WhatsApp and doing conferences. So the change is definitely coming, Anand, and this push and pull from the society, from the youngsters, will definitely help to go it forward. But our government policies and all definitely should also improve in this direction. The new generation, what they are thinking.
Thank you, Samir. My next question, before we take audience questions, is something that concerns a large part of our, a large number of our readers who come from the machine tools industry or machine tool builders. Now, as you know, that more than 60% of machine tools industry is directly or indirectly a supplier to the automotive industry, which is the biggest customer of India's machine tool industry. Now they're interested in knowing that their largest customer, what are the trends that are driving it, how the cars are going to be designed, how the government policies are going to be affecting this industry. And climate crisis is the biggest thing that is driving the policy of the government in this direction, which is positively or otherwise affecting this industry. So now my question is that what is your message to machine tool builders? One thing I would like to quickly add is that there is a new emerging industry in India, which is aerospace and defense industry, which has taken a lot of its skills and technology cues from the automotive industry. Is because of the presence of such a sophisticated automotive industry in India is why we have this move towards or aerospace industry. So people are very keenly watching these newer industries coming out of the automotive industry. So now I'm coming finally to my question, is that how do you see the overall status of the automotive industry in India, given the last 2 years of the pandemic, given the global trade conflicts, given the supply chain disruptions that have happened in the last 2-3 years globally, the uncertainties in the global market? How do you see the status of India's manufacturing industry, and what is the message to machine tool builders in terms of telling them that there is a lot of growth or lack thereof in the automotive industry that they're going to see in the future? Gautam, your thoughts?
Yes, thank you. Very, very pertinent question, because by the way, it is a pretty large industry, machine tool, or whatever we call it, automation, machine tool, manufacturing, infrastructure industry, if I may call it. Let me set the context by saying that there are many more classifications, but standard machines and customized machines, big special purpose machines. So which includes conveyors and packaging machines and special purpose machines that are needed for doing specially designed tasks. And then there are standard machines. First and foremost, like in automobile, their challenge is also to become energy efficient. So by far, there is a parallel between what we discussed, what Mr. Jindal discussed for an automobile in terms of reducing the number of parts, reducing mass, all that points towards reducing energy consumed to do the same job. A lighter machine doing bigger things. I remember one of the Indian equipment CEOs in one of our events, in-house events, and he said, the kind of competition I'm facing, customer need that we are facing in the world is half the rating, twice the output. So whatever we are doing, reduce the rating by half, reduce the consumption, energy efficiency, improve it twice, and produce twice more. So that's the kind of challenge we are facing in machine tool. That's one. Two, bring in the aspect of aerospace and defense, which we are talking about much smaller number of batch size. We may not always end up having the facility of tool-based production. It may be 3D printing and additive manufacturing or more customized fabricated parts. My background is for aerospace, by the way, a long time ago. I remember the time for India, and I used to work for the Indian government and public sector. We used to make components out of raw blocks of aluminum alloys, because that's how the industry is. If I have to make 100 panel boxes, I cannot afford to have a die-casted tool or a whatever else I can do. I actually dug out material from blocks of aluminum alloys on a CNC machine and created that. So it's a different kind of industry from manufacturing strategy. I maybe totally different from the way we are in a more volume-centric automotive industry. So while there are people who have been supplying to automobile, but now will be supplying to aerospace or intend to supply to aerospace and defense, the strategy for manufacturing need to go through changes. Coming back to machine tool, I think machine tool, number one, energy efficiency. Number two, modular. Okay, what does modular mean? 60 to 70% of the machine capability remains repetitive and standard. 30 to 40% are bespoke, based on the order or customization or customer needs. Remember the days once upon a time when CNC machines used to have 25 pages of options to be ticked when you're ordering. How many, do you need a tool changer? Yes or no? If you say yes, it's a 5 tool changer, 10 tool changer, 35 tool changer, 100 tool changer. It all depends on the kind of job you're going to do on that CNC machine. Do you need twin pallets or single fixed bed? Okay, twin pallet is so that one comes out, one goes in, and you can make the changeover when. So all these aspects are making it modular. Modular means it needs to be designed differently. Third, what kind of commissioning are you looking at? Are you going to commission, assemble the machine and supply the final machine? Or it is so large that it needs to be assembled on site? If it needs to be assembled on site, the entire bill of material, bill of shipment, configuration management is totally differently managed. Imagine, Anand, a situation where you supply a machine and you forgot one component, left it behind, and now you are waiting for it to be, how much inventory is sitting there without being, producing something. So all these aspects bring in modularity, energy efficiency, and electromechanical automation, because machines are also becoming smarter, like automobiles. So you need to have a good solid mechatronic support for making the automation possible. These are the 3 trends I would like to highlight. Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very insightful. Yogesh, what is your take on the health of the automotive industry in the near future, given that it has been battered by many trends in recent past, including the pandemic and the global trade conflict? And what is your message to machine tool builders from that perspective?
See, since the time I'm part of the automobile IT, I have seen only the sine waves. Sometimes there are very large dips, and sometimes there are very high peaks. However, those who are in a sustainability mode, they know that they have to, they have the backbones and the thought process, the strategic thought processes, which are required for survival, upskill, and then maintain. And it's the same thought process. I would give it to the tool manufacturers, supply chain ecosystems. That Gautam mentioned about JITs. Yes, that was the way of our manufacturing since beginning, last 20 years. The time has come to think whether is it going to be the sustainable model. Yes, it has helped so far last 25-30 years. Is it going to be the sustainable model, or do we have to keep some, bring a hybrid model in the JITs and as well as batch processing, and then make sure we have the components available to supply to cater the spike of the delivery, and as well as sustain during the valleys. Now, it's not so easy because everybody everything goes through either ROI, your bank loans, or your paychecks. If these three components are building the pressure on you, then you'll not be able to sustain it. Now, of course, there are a lot of thoughts to, food for a thought that we can give. We can make a certain commitments, follow a certain commitments for every supply chain in the ecosystem. A viability of that need to come out of the collaborative efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Yogesh. Samir, your message to the machine tool builders about the health of the industry.
Yeah, Anand. So I was just thinking on what Gautam has emphasized. It is very important for all machine tool manufacturers to now also develop some new technologies in terms of modular and making it a cheaper way of manufacturing, and also looking into new ways of getting in line with what automakers are facing currently. So as you, Anand, asked that how is the industry going after the COVID? So I would just like to speak two lines on this. So as we have all faced a very tough time of the COVID times, and this time the definitely all the OEMs faced the downfall of the demand. But as the COVID period subsides, the demand has increased to many fold actually. And the people are now avoiding the shared vehicles and public transport, and going to buy more and more cars and or two-wheelers and three-wheelers. So the industry demand has surged significantly, and we are right now facing a very severe crunch of chip, as you all know, across the OEMs. Today, Times of India also you have seen how much decrease is there in the production in four-wheelers and two-wheeler industry. The automakers are facing. So the demand is huge. We are not able to right now cope up demand for our customers. Our models are like 1 year in waiting, actually going on, and our production is limited. So there is an ample opportunity for all the machine tool manufacturers, for component manufacturers in the future to come up with some of the innovative solutions. And somewhere in the industry in India, if we can incorporate how the chip gets manufactured in Taiwan and China and all these abroad countries, and some make in India we can offer, automakers will be very, very interested to look into the such opportunities and getting into it. So as Gautam pointed out rightly that earlier days we were having a CNC machines. I remember during my college days also, first time I did a project of developing a new CNC drilling machine, three-dimensional. And then we all moved to special purpose machines, SPMs, and then 3D printing, and a lot of SLA, SLB, all these type of technologies, SLR. So these things right now are getting widely used for making a prototypes. And also from the aerospace industry, the automotive has also learned to make these parts quickly and test them. So all these things, I think machine tool manufacturers can pick up and offer to OEMs as well as the solutions. And there is, I think, a long way to go. We all are in a progressive zone right now.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Samir. There are some audience questions. I think one question on digital twin, I believe, stems from the
I can take
presentation
that if you want.
Yes, please.
Okay, because that's my bread and butter. Okay.
Thank you so much.
So basically, I don't use much of a jargons. There are various people uses various jargons in the industry, but I go with very, very simple approach. Okay. When somebody calls a digital twin, what is it? It's a virtual representation of the as is design that will be there. So as designed, as built, as maintained of a physical component. Now, augmented reality in a real-time process manufacturing, that's the connect you bring, and it becomes your digital twin. In our industry, typically, that's must have right now, because no one can make a prototype, submit it, and then take a approval, then go to the production after approval, signing the paperwork, and kind of. It's a virtual fit of your whichever application that you use. You can use, I'm going to take the names. You can use CAD, CAM, PLM, or whichever it is. But it's a virtual representation and capsulization of the nature in a real time and operational data with a digital representation. That's a digital twin. Is it used? Yes, it is very much there on the table every time for every product that we use today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Yogesh. That sounded very well. Gautam, you'd like to take this up?
Yeah, just one additional thing to what Yogesh mentioned. There's a second half of the question which says how is it adopted by MSME and SME point of view in India? And I'm extending that question because I appreciate the question, whoever has written it, that what he means probably is there are issues, Anand, which drive adoption. Issues related to availability of funds to begin with, availability of expertise, because that's what our study and interaction shows in India, that these are the two big reasons why SMEs and MSMEs are reluctant. I would not say they don't appreciate. Of course they do. They understand the need. They understand the relevance. They're intelligent enough to appreciate the capability it can help. But the reason of reluctance is essentially primarily lack of expertise in-house. So answering answer to that question is not easy. It needs a bit of a discussion, but I would say that more and more people, providers, consulting companies, technology providers like the one I represent and many others, they are making it easier, from training to skill building to making it available on cloud, on subscription, so that you can pay as you go. You don't have to spend a lot of money to buy licenses for such technology and software which you do not know how to use. So you can take a subscription, practice it. Today, such abilities, training facilities are available online for you to practice baby step by baby step, all those technologies that Yogesh mentioned. I don't think, in addition to what I said, I don't think it is about technology, Anand. It is about absorption of technology in my processes. And I would like to throw a challenge back that we need to first ensure that we ourselves have understood our own process so that it is replicable and consistent. It is not in the minds of people, not in the minds of the technicians and the engineers on the shop floor. There are documentation where processes are maintained, and if there's any change, then we change the documentation. If there's a change in design which is forcing a change of process, it is documented. Why? The fact that when it starts to be getting documented, it is easier to capture in technology. Technology is an enabler. Garbage in, garbage out.
Yogesh, any thoughts on that from a user perspective?
Absolutely. I mean, people used to talk about some, in earlier forum somewhere, somebody mentioned about ERP, and I use the same dialogue what Gautam used, that ERP is a garbage in, garbage out. What happens inside that to the data is most important. If what you feed is correct, then you get accurate results. Similar to that, for digital twin, it's a simulation. If your simulation and your product needs to match 100% to 100%, and what you are using is just a media in between. You may use Google Lens, you may use your HoloLenses, you may use AR, or you may use a normal pencil and a paper. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you adapting it in your processes? And that process change takes the time, because it's a right from your storage operations to your WIP to your invoicing and out. This is a very simple chain of sequence in any manufacturing industry, no matter it's automotive or pharma or whichever. That chain of sequence associated with documentation in each stage is most vital. And any change in that needs to get rephrased, revalidated, redocumented in that process. And every SME, MSME, OEM goes through that process. Your way of documentation may have changed. Somebody keeps a voice message. I have seen that in Jamshedpur. One manufacturer keeps a voice notes on those changes. And that's a good way of doing it, because that's the way they connect with a technician in the local language. And I really appreciate the local language connect that gives not only just from the conventional message, but also gives that emotional message that somebody needs to do what.
Wow, amazing and very, very helpful. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And a pretty valid question. Thank you for the question, whoever has asked it.
Great, great. Samir, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Yogesh has very well said about it. I'll take the next question, the top 3 trends to look out for the automotive sector.
Yes, please.
So,
yes, please.
Yeah, so I think this is right now what we see, the emerging trend and what the consumer like is number one is the disruption, and disruption of any form in terms of technology in IoT, or getting Alexa into the car, or ADAS new features, or artificial intelligence, or car as a platform, cab. So customer right now is used to the old automobile, and now they want something new. So this is something for a lot of automakers, and as you see in the new models in the market, they are trying. So this is one very new trend which we are seeing. Number 2 is what we see right now is cheaper electric vehicles. So this is one thing which is getting lot into demand. As we see the electric vehicle 4-wheeler passenger market right now, it is dominated by Tata Nexon, which is around 10 to 12 lakhs. And they right now are selling around 1,200, 1,300 vehicles a month, followed by our ZS EV, which sells around 400 to 500, but the cost is around 25 lakhs. So customer right now is hungry for cheaper EVs. And as I talk to younger generation, they want car EV of around 6 to 8 lakhs, which they can afford, and they can use it as a city car. So that is one second disruption I see in an emerging trend. And thirdly, the customer wants a very good service and a high resale value of the car. This is very important because if your car is not going to get a good service from the OEMs, slowly your faith on the OEM, on the car, is going to deteriorate, and your sales is going to be very less. And after a few years, when you are going to resell the car, if you are getting a 25%, 30%, or very less amount of resale value, the customer don't recognize or appreciate that brand as such. So this is a very important thing for all the OEMs and the automakers to look into, and this is the new trend which is emerging in the market. So Anand, I think
yes,
this is what I see as the top 3 trends.
Amazing. That's going to benefit our readers a lot. Thank you so much, Samir. Other speakers would want to speak on this. This is the last question that we're going to take before we wrap up the discussion, given the time in hand. Would you like to share your thoughts on the top 3 trends to look out? Although it's a very broad-based question, and Samir did a lot of justice to it.
I stand by Samir. I think it's his story to tell. So what I can only say from based on whatever we have experienced from the global, that more and more people would be looking for whatever may be their, I would say, cost perception, fully featured, most comfortable, whatever is latest available, no cutting corners. Cheap car is over at the best price available. So when you said 6 to 8 lakhs, I would say fully featured in 6 to 8 lakhs. That would be the trend. So now it backed by technology and facility. So I'm saying it from engineering point of view, not from a consumer point of view. You have to have all the capabilities, including safety. I'm not going to pay 6 to 8 lakhs, but one airbag, it would be as safe as it comes as per regulations, of course, as per specifications. I would like to add that fully featured.
Yeah, true. This is definitely, it is a requirement, and people want more and more features at less and less cost. That's right now.
That is the right way of putting it. Yeah.
It's always a consumer driven market. So consumer is a king. They will demand more features and in a sustainable cost or a marginal high cost. Of course, there will be some which will demand more and as well as will be ready to pay more, but that's just 5% of the society. So and to whom we have to cater, whether it's cater to the 95% of the society or focus on just 5% of the society, it's up to the OEMs.
Wow. Today's discussion has been full of insight, and it's an absolute windfall for me as an editor when I'm going to look at the transcript and take out all the many countless insights that have come out of this discussion, and will benefit our readers a lot, especially the younger generation that is keen to know about the car makers' perspective on climate crisis. Thank you so much, gentlemen. You have a great weekend. Thank you for contributing so much value to today's discussion.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Jindal. Thank you, Yogesh. Thank you for being with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand, Gautam, Samir. Glad to meet you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Likewise. Bye-bye.